Mr. Hoff with Classroom Composers, and in today's video lesson, we're going to learn how to open our flute case, we're going to learn the parts of our flute, we're going to learn how to build our flute, and then lastly, we're going to learn how to clean and maintain our flute. This video is going to correspond with lessons 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the pre-method book. So let's go ahead and get into it. So I have my flute case right here. This is a hard flute case. Your flute case might look a little bit different, but hopefully you'll be able to figure it out if your case is a little bit different than mine. Just a quick thing to know about flute cases is that even though this is hard, this will not protect the flute from anything serious, like a car running it over or dropping it from really high. This mostly just protects it if you kind of maybe bump into something. So make sure just because the flute's in the case, you still got to treat it right. The way that I like to first start by opening the case is to actually put it flat on the floor, just like that, so that nothing when I open the case falls out of the case. A good way to check to make sure that your flute is the right direction is you want to look for the latches, and that the latches should be going up like that. Another good way to check is you want to check for the brand name of the case should be on top as well. So I'm going to put my case on the floor, and I'm going to go ahead and unlatch my case, and then I'm going to carefully open it up, and inside of my case what you should see is you should see 3 flute parts and 2 things that you can use to clean your flute. The first flute part that you're going to take a look for is your head joint. The second flute part that you're going to want to look for is the foot joint. And the final flute part that you're going to want to look for is the body of the flute. If any of those 3 flute parts are not in your case, it's important that you tell your teacher or you tell the store that you purchased the flute from. The next thing you're going to want to look for is the cleaning rod. And then the last thing you're going to want to look for is the cleaning swab. And if you have those 5 things in your case, then you should be all good to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and move to our parts of the flute. And we're going to start with the head joint first. This is our head joint right here. On the head joint, we have the lip plate, which is where your lip goes, and we have the tone hole or the embouchure hole, which is what you're eventually going to blow across. So head joint, tone hole, embouchure hole, and lip plate. Moving on to the next part of the flute, this is the body of the flute. And on the lower part of the flute, you have what are going to be called your right hand keys. And on the top are going to be your left hand keys. Your right hand is going to operate the right hand keys, and then your left hand is obviously going to operate the left hand keys. On the back side, you have your 2 thumb keys, which are going to be operated by your left thumb, and your right thumb actually is not going to operate anything on there. And then the final part of the flute is going to be the foot joint, and this is going to be the bottom of the flute. And on the foot joint, you have your E flat or your pinky key, which your right pinky is going to operate once we've built our flute. Okay, so now that we know the different parts of our flute, let's go ahead and learn how to put the flute together and how to assemble the flute. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the body of the flute with both hands. I'm going to be careful as I do this, and I'm going to put this across my lap. Once I have the body across my lap, I'm going to look for my head joint. And then I'm going to take my head joint and I'm going to carefully insert the head joint into the body of the flute. The head joint is only going to work in one direction, so if it doesn't work down here and it's not going in, don't force anything. You need to flip it to the other side and make sure that you've got it going in the right connection point. And then once I've got the head joint in, I need to line up the embouchure hole with the line of keys in the flute. As you can see, we have the keys are mostly in a straight line here, and we want to make sure that the embouchure hole is lined up with the keys. If the flute is turned this direction, it's going to be very hard to play. So we need to make sure that we have everything lined up, everything looked good, and now we're set. The final part that we need to put on is our foot joint. And we're going to place the foot joint on the other end of the flute. And a common mistake that I see with flute players when they're first learning to build their flute is they want to line up all the keys, or maybe they do something like this and they want all the keys to line up, but that's actually not what you want. You want to look for the pinky or the E flat key, and you want that pinky key to be lined up with the rest of the keys. So just make sure that when you're putting your foot joint on that you have this pinky key lined up and not like this. This would be incorrect. This is correct. And now we have our flute completely built. And the final thing that we're going to learn how to do is we're going to learn how to clean and maintain the flute. Once you're done playing, all the air that you've been blowing through the flute is going to turn into moisture, and the inside of the flute is going to get wet. And if you don't clean the inside of the flute, then what eventually is going to happen is that moisture will turn into mold and it will get dirty on the inside, which is pretty gross. So we have to swab our flute. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to grab my cleaning rod, and then I'm going to grab my cleaning swab from my flute case. I'm going to take the corner of the swab and I'm going to stick it through the hole of the cleaning rod, and I'm just going to pull it through a little way just so that I have something that looks like this now. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to take off my head joint, and then I'm going to take the cleaning swab and I'm just going to swab the inside of the flute just like this so I can collect that moisture that's been building up as I've been playing. I've swabbed the head joint. I'm going to put the head joint back in the case, and then I'm going to take the foot joint off, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to swab the inside of the foot joint just like this. I'm going to collect all that moisture, and I'm going to put the foot joint back in the case. And the final thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to swab the entire body of the flute to collect that moisture. And as you're doing this, make sure that you're very careful and you're not forcing anything. If it gets stuck, you can damage the flute, so never force anything. I've got this all swabbed. I'm going to put the flute back in the case. I'm going to take my swab apart. I'm going to place the cleaning rod in the case. I'm going to carefully place the cleaning swab. Now I'm going to close everything up, make sure it's lashed all the way, and now I'm good to go.